happened again. Who in the hell saw that coming?
When the twilight is gone and no songbirds are singing, when the twilight is gone,
Who in the hell saw that coming was probably also the reaction of many who saw the original Twin Peaks when it aired back in the spring of 1990. The sudden appearance of a David Lynch-helmed television show at the time must have been jarring, particularly given that the three most popular series of the day were The Cosby Show, Roseanne, and Cheers. The series, co-created by Lynch and television veteran Mark Frost, would come to redefine network programming. Sort of. Its influence was undeniable, and it's been frequently referenced and parodied ever since.
Freedom, L.E. the Blues.
But its shadow was much longer than it ever was. People love to toss around phrases like cultural phenomenon, but the fact is the critically lauded first season still finished 40th in the ratings for the year, and the last 6 episodes of the second season were only even aired due to a letter-writing campaign by fans to save a show that had sunk to 85th out of 89 series, with the final 2 episodes being aired a month and a half after the rest. As cultural phenomenons go, it was short-lived.
A light that burns twice as bright burns half as long.
Unwilling to let the story die, Lynch produced the feature film Fire Walk With Me, the first of a planned 3-film arc, but which ended up being the only Twin Peaks film ever made after its initially poor reception from the critics and audiences that had once lauded him as a genius, because, let's face it, people are trend-chasing jerks, or, to hear it explained in a way more in tune with the average filmgoer's tastes,
The one thing they love more than a hero is to see a hero fail, fall, die trying. In spite of everything you've done for them, eventually they will hate you.
But with Laura Palmer's parting comment of,
I'll see you again in 25 years.
as the series approached its 25th anniversary, a murmuring began. If ever there was a possibility for more Twin Peaks, that would be the ideal opportunity. But Lynch seemed to have more or less retired from directing, his last film having come out in 2006. Was a revisitation even possible?
My dream is to go to that place, you know, the one where it all began.
Rumors and speculations began swirling as the series edged closer to the quarter-century mark. Lynch denied them, and, if his recollection of the time frame is correct, kept denying them even well past the point when he and Mark Frost were actually working on the revival.
God damn, these people are confusing.
And when the announcement was finally made, it was both amazing and dumbfounding.
Let's rock.
Also, really exciting. What would the new show be like? There was no precedent for a series that had died in the ratings to be revived 2.5 decades later. Not via a remake, but an actual continuation of the story with the same characters and actors.
The absurd mystery of the strange forces of existence.
How would they approach it? Would it begin by dealing with the existing cliffhangers from Season 2 so a new story could get underway? Season 1 had ended with lead character Dale Cooper being shot by an unseen assailant in what was probably a reference to TV's then most famous season ender, the shooting of J.R. Ewing on Dallas. Dallas fans, however, had only to wait until the new season began that fall to get their answers. Twin Peaks fans had to wait 16 episodes into Season 2 in order to get resolution. And anyone who'd been paying attention would have known that the film work of David Lynch hadn't exactly been getting more accessible as the years had progressed. And then, after 2 agonizing years of waiting since the announcement, it arrived. And when it was all over and done, we had more questions than answers. And the clamoring for a 4th season began almost immediately, including from members of the show's cast. I consider myself among those voices, not because I expect a solid resolution on a 4th go-around, but simply because, when it comes to Twin Peaks, I don't want to leave.
My prayer
looking at what the new series of Twin Peaks was, it's helpful to remember what Twin Peaks fundamentally had been. Long after the reality of the show had faded from easy memory, many who had seen it in its day recalled a quirky show about donuts, cherry pie, and a deep love of coffee. And make no mistake, it does still have great fun exploiting those bits of nostalgia for humor.
In the box there. Is that a cherry pie?
But that was only ever surface-level decor. At its heart, it was a show about murder and tragedy, less of a whodunit than a what happens after they done it. And what began as a relatively straightforward story of a homicide investigation only got weirder and weirder and weirder, to the point that the final episode was and doubtlessly still is the single strangest thing ever shown on broadcast television. And it would seem as though Lynch and Frost had taken the point of view that that weirdness trajectory had been steadily climbing for the entire intervening 25 years, because when the series returned,
Through the darkness of future past, the magician longs to see one chance out between two worlds. Fire, walk with me.
Don't say you weren't warned. There were articles aplenty advising prospective viewers of the new series to catch up on the first 2 seasons and prequel film, but you just know there were plenty of smarter-than-thous out there thinking, I don't need to do all that homework. I can figure things out as I go. Showtime premiered the first 2 episodes back-to-back, and a quick look at the series' overall rating shows that that's right where most of those people jumped right back off this crazy train.
That's damn fine coffee you got here in Twin Peaks.
Brilliant! I have absolutely no idea what's going on.
they probably weren't the only ones. If you'd listened hard enough, you probably could have heard across America the screams of the viewers calling out, shouting into the void, "What the hell does it all mean?"
It's up to you.
That doesn't help. But the fact is, Lynch is a dyed-in-the-wool artist who does what he wants, and the idea of fan pandering probably never even occurred to him. It's kind of crazy to think that at one time he was actually considered as a potential director for Return of the Jedi. I mean, how crazy would that have been?
I close my eyes, then I...
What are you faggots want?
What kind of beer do you like? Heineken. Heineken? Fuck that shit!
Who the hell knows? Though the new series does delve a bit into science fiction, it frankly bears more in common with Lynch's debut feature Eraserhead than anything to do with Star Wars. Or for that matter, with the first 2 seasons of Twin Peaks.
And that's enough said about that.
In many ways, it feels like the summation of Lynch's entire career, with echoes of many of his previous works and themes appearing throughout.
At your house.
Along with a cast list that includes practically every living actor he's ever worked with before.
It is thrilling.
Perfect, almost unanimously present to series. Apparently, it's been long and it is now full for some to last 20 seconds. But on them, fans who reverted over what they expected to see her author, the English fans in general, or in each fans specifically. One of the most unexpected things was miraculously how little of the story took place in the anonymous town.
Large stretches of narrative occur in Las Vegas and the fictitious Buckhorn, South Dakota, with series bookending scenes in New York and Odessa, Texas. While the events involving the characters of Twin Peaks Sheriff's Department are as fleshed out as anything else in the series, much of the remaining in-town material is fragmentary, with small vignettes featuring many of the show's previous cast that don't really play into the overarching plot, whatever that could be said to be. It's an impressionistic approach that gives a sort of smell of the place in modern times without lingering on the soap opera-esque schemes and love triangles that were the bread and butter of the first 2 seasons. While the thrust of the story unfolds elsewhere, the series lingers now and again on short tales of Twin Peaks residents, reminding us of where this all began, and where it will all end up, and possibly what's ultimately at stake. It's also possibly a way of viewing the series as a sort of spin-off from itself, or, in a way, the spin-off that never happened. Lynch's feature film Mulholland Drive began as a pilot for an ABC series, which the network ultimately rejected as too weird, as if they should have expected anything else, but it began as a germ of an idea for a Twin Peaks spin-off that would have featured Audrey Horne, though any connection to Peaks was effectively severed by the time we finally saw it. Well, mostly. One can't help but notice certain similarities between it and The Return, including a pair of gangster brothers, a main character suffering a loss of identity, and an existential crisis that occurs in the midst of a musical performance at a club. It's possible that many of the ideas which Lynch had intended for Mulholland Drive, had it continued as a series, found a new home. Naomi Watts' protagonist began the film as a wide-eyed innocent, full of possibility and positivity, almost the polar opposite of where she ended up. And there are some parallels with the eventual trajectory of Special Agent Dale Cooper. We're introduced to him as a stalwart but naive optimist who viewed the town through the eyes of an outsider and saw innocence, when it was really anything but.
How do you find our little corner of this world?
Heaven, sir.
Well, this week heaven includes arson, multiple homicides, and an attempt on the life of a federal agent.
Heaven is a large and interesting place, sir.
In present day, things seem to have only gotten worse. Drugs, prostitution.
He wanted blondes, I sent him 2 blondes.
And abject poverty.
I don't like people selling their blood to eat.
Are the order of the day, and sickness seems to pervade every nook and cranny of the town.
What is this?
It's corn, it's fertility, but it's black, diseased or unnatural.
Often characters we'll meet only once will appear seemingly to remind us that there's a health crisis, while former doctor Lawrence Jacoby takes to the internet to rail about the injustice of a world that keeps people mired in misery.
Our air, our water, our earth, the very soil itself, our food, our bodies poisoned. Where are the cops when we need them?
Where indeed, even the absence of Sheriff Harry Truman, whose actor had since retired, was explained away via a health issue, with the absent former lawman fighting some unspecified but clearly serious illness off-screen.
And Harry, do me a favor. Beat this thing.
I suppose the death of the log lady should be included as an example, though given Catherine Coulson's own ill health at the time of filming, it was less of a choice than an inevitability. However, the fact that she performed her character's death a mere 4 days before she actually died is nothing short of amazing, and it's one of the bravest performances I've ever seen.
There's some fear in letting go.
Numerous other cast members died either prior to the series or during production, resulting in some imaginative workarounds where the character's death became part of the plot, or the character did return, but in an unconventional way. David Bowie's agent Philip Jeffries appeared as a mechanical device spewing smoke when the actor was too sick to return in person.
When you see me again, it's gonna be me.
And the famous Man from Another Place was turned into a talking sycamore tree after the still-living Michael J. Anderson declined to return, and then went on a public bad-mouthing of Lynch in a truly epic case of sour grapes. I guess the takeaway lesson is, don't trash-talk David Lynch, or else...
I'll turn you into a fucking tree.
Though it's often very humorous, we're reminded that Twin Peaks was always about personal tragedy at its core, and Cooper would be confronted with the immovability of that fact before all was said and done. Indeed, this seems to have been Lynch and Frost's underlying intention with the series.
The murder of Laura Palmer was never supposed to be solved.
If The Return made one thing clear, it's that there's no such thing as closure.
Laura Palmer?
Many people were confused when Lynch created a theatrical Twin Peaks feature not to resolve the second season's many cliffhangers, but to go back to tell Laura's story, and this third season only makes the point clearer. Both Twin Peaks the town and Twin Peaks the series needed Laura Palmer. Nervous studio heads had insisted that the murder be resolved halfway through the second season. The creators felt that this would suck the life out of the show by removing the driving force behind it, and such is essentially what happened.
The little goose is laying golden eggs. And why would you kill this little goose? It's unreal.
As far as emotions went, Lynch was never anything but sincere. Irony simply isn't in his playbook. And if, for example, a scene of a girl giving an impassioned speech about her dream of the Robins returning and bringing love and light back to the world is just too corny and lacking in self-awareness for you, then Lynch probably isn't for you. And if you like your television cozy and low-key, then it's probably really not for you. As rapturous as his highs can be, Lynch's dark places don't exactly flinch away from discomfort. Most nighttime series would deal with the loss of a loved one with a bit of sniffling and perhaps a heartfelt hug or two, after which everyone would bravely soldier on after a few minutes' grief. The moment when the parents of Laura Palmer discover that she's died is not only brilliantly staged, but one of the most heart-wrenching pieces of film I've ever seen. This is genuine, hysterical, painful grieving that doesn't go away after one scene, or one episode, or even one season. Despite its brutally honest tone, however, in a way Twin Peaks always acknowledged its own fictitious nature. The in-series soap opera Invitation to Love, which appeared to be the only TV show that was ever airing in the town, no matter what time of day it was a nod to the nighttime soaps that Peaks was both drawing upon and satirizing, with events often paralleling those in the main story. The theatrical feature then parted ways with television in a graphically illustrated way in its very first shot. The return took the idea into weirder places, as was its wont. Cooper's old ally, the Giant, now self-identified as the Fireman, watches events we've seen previously on a giant theater screen and decides to contribute his own element to the narrative. Taking the golden egg notion rather literally, Laura is his gift to the world, not a remotely realistic-looking world, but one more reminiscent of the old Universal logo. Twin Peaks is film, a story, a creation, a synthesis of ideas. It's decidedly not reality.
We live inside a dream.
It's more like, as various characters have pointed out,
some strange and twisted dream.
But the crucial question remains,
but who is the dreamer?
Many people have taken this to mean that Twin Peaks in its entirety is meant to be the dream of one of its characters.
The idea for all this really came from a dream?
Yes, it did.
I don't think that's the idea. For Lynch, dreams aren't some cheap gimmick for scares or fake-outs, but a more fundamental part of life experience. Almost every Lynch film contains a dream sequence, or in some cases may entirely be one. In fact, it seems to be a fundamental part of his process.
We never get to, go dreamy or anything. We barely fucking make our days. I could have spent a week in the Fireman's. I love that place. And dream up all kinds of stuff.
In the original series, Cooper dreamt of being in a strange room 25 years later when Laura would whisper the name of her killer in his ear. He couldn't remember the name once he woke, but network pressure eventually forced its revelation. Now, 25 years later in the timeline, he experiences that same event, not as a dream, so far as we know, but as reality. This time, we never hear what she whispers. Is it the same thing he dreamt she would say, or something else?
Returning to the story of Twin Peaks, David Lynch got to go back and essentially undo what he considered the series' greatest misstep and turned Laura back into an enigma and left her that way. Because there is no Twin Peaks without the mystery of Laura Palmer.
The one leading to the many is Laura Palmer. Laura is the one.
Diane, the death of Laura Palmer left lasting scars on her community, which now sadly limps on without her, as if sick and unable to heal.
Laura Palmer's death has affected each and every man, woman, and child because life has meaning here.
Who's Laura Palmer?
That, my dear, is a long story.
Where's Laura? The return feels at times like the autopsy of an entire community whose pain and suffering are feeding a greater evil.
It's a fire symbol. If you put these two symbols together, you get this.
Cancer! Leukemia! Cardiac arrest!
Death.
A damn bad story, isn't it, Hawk?
Particularly stricken is Sarah Palmer, who's reduced to a shell that smokes, drinks, watches TV, and occasionally freaks out in public.
I am trying to tell you that you have to watch out. Things can happen. Something happened to me.
Laura was the light of Twin Peaks, in a way. She tutored both Josie Packard and Johnny Horn and organized a Meals on Wheels program for the elderly. She was the smiling face of her school, and she tried to protect her friends from the evil she knew was out there.
In these days, the glow is dying. Laura is the one.
Because she knew better than most that it wasn't really that far out there.
Your Laura disappeared. It's just me now.
Twin Peaks appears to be a place where the warring forces of light and dark conflict.
There's a sort of evil out there. Something very, very strange in these old woods. And we've always been here to fight it.
But for Lynch, light and dark aren't the comfortably separate entities we'd prefer them to be. They coexist in unsettlingly close proximity, like the beautifully manicured lawn that hides a mass of warring beetles.
Watch for that one. The one I told you about. The one under the moon on Blue Pine Mountain.
This is what I want. What is this?
Frank, you don't ever want to know about that.
Really?
Really.
Laura had been the subject of abuse, but her greatest fear was that she might herself become the very thing she hated, become a part of the cycle of violence and depravity that had victimized her.
I don't want you to be like me.
As the poster for Fire Walk With Me made clear, in a town like Twin Peaks, no one is innocent. Even our upright hero is more than a unidimensional white knight.
There is a legend of a place called the Black Lodge. There, you will meet your own shadow self.
As with much of Lynch's work, Peaks is about the evil that lives within us.
I don't know if you're a detective or a pervert.
You're like me.
Twin Peaks: The Return made that more literal than ever, with Kyle MacLachlan playing both protagonist and antagonist for the series. Like Dale Cooper, we're all a mix of the light, the dark, and oftentimes the clueless in varying proportions.
I have to face the fact that I really don't know how to be good.
Realizing this is hard and often unwanted. We're caught between who we dream we are and who we really are. The unsettling revelation in the end is that Cooper's shadow self is ultimately a part of him, not a separate being. He's still in there and always will be. Lynch's films rarely actually depict conflict within an individual. They're more concerned with simply acknowledging the dichotomies within people. I mean, the word twin is right there in the title. Diane Selwyn might wish to be the optimistic, kind-hearted Betty Elms, and Fred Madison might wish he was the innocent, well-meaning Pete Dayton. But these extended reveries aren't inner conflicts, but simply laments our protagonists have at a point when it's already too late for them to learn from their better selves. Even the literalized splitting of Cooper into good and bad halves doesn't play out the way we'd expect. Cooper's shadow self is a ruthless schemer with double and triple redundancies and contingencies for every occasion.
Better be done next time I call.
Physically imposing, technologically gifted, a master manipulator. He's this story's Padishah Emperor Shaddam IV.
I see plans within plans. I see two great houses feuding. I see you behind it.
He expends much effort in attempting to take out the real Agent Cooper. The real Agent Cooper, by contrast, returns to our world almost as a newborn and spends basically no time at all tracking down and combating his nemesis. He's lucky to make it through the front door. But in his state of total innocence, he, quite by accident, saves a family from financial ruin, uncovers a criminal conspiracy,
I have to confess.
and even brings out the good in a pair of Las Vegas gangsters. It suggests that as individuals, the struggle against evil might best be accomplished by simply doing good.
I am witness to the fact that you both have hearts of gold.
They do.
The defeat of a specific evil doesn't mean good will automatically fill the void, which may be why Cooper's ultimate mission isn't simply besting some personal foe, but an attempt to heal the wounds inflicted on Twin Peaks at their source, to bring the light back to their world. As Lynch once wrote in a prior story,
There is trouble till the robins come.
and even in Lynchland, things aren't always tilted towards the dark.
I only wanted to do good. I wanted to be good.
Inside a character who might be obviously a villain, there may be a hero trying to get out.
Save Shelley. Save Shelley.
A controlling spouse can learn selflessness.
Ed, I want you to be free.
And an irresponsible, dangerous brat doesn't have to stay that way.
My son was standing there. He was happy and carefree.
Somehow he knew that it would all turn out well. He saw this life for you.
That was my vision of you.
And inspiration can come from unexpected sources.
Dig yourself out of the shit. Accept no substitute.
As to what it all means, that's a discussion for another time. Just know that Lynch has said he does know what's going on in the show, so that implies there is an answer. It just requires that we might have to think a little more about it than usual. Or maybe just a little differently than usual.
At least we're getting out of this fucking town of Odessa.
I'm driving in your car, pretending that we'll leave this town. We're watching all the streetlights fade, and now you're just a stranger's dream. I took your picture from the frame, and though you're nothing like you seem, your shadow fell like last night's rain.
My shadow is always with me.
So is Twin Peaks over and done? Lynch has been characteristically evasive, both indicating the story is finished and implying it may not be.
It's calling, but the signal has a lot of disturbances.
But if there's truly no more to come, at least this time Lynch and Frost got to end things on their own terms.